Barlett, and I am the operations manager here at Ward Technology Talent, as well as one of the many organizers of the Mobile Learning Lab. I want to thank everyone for coming out. I do see some familiar faces, but I see a lot of new faces, so that's great. So for those of you who don't know, Ward Technology Talent is an IT staffing firm, and we've been running the Mobile Learning Lab for the past 5.5 years. It is our mission to build communities that have a positive impact, and that's why the MLL came to be and why we strive to continue running them monthly for the greater tech community. We're always open for feedback, so if you have topic ideas or something that you really want to hear about, know someone that could be a great speaker, reach out to one of us with the MLL shirts at the end of the event. Just to give you guys, I guess, a run through, the way this is going to work is we have 3 speakers. They'll be speaking for about 10 minutes each, follow up with a short Q&A, and then at the end, if you have any specific questions, there'll be some networking at the end and you can talk to everyone directly. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Casper to introduce our first speaker.
So to kick off our event, we have Harrison Olajos, virtual reality consultant, educator, and creative, and also the CEO of UP360, speaking of virtual reality and the future of experiential learning.
Thank you. So just quickly before I get going, just by show of hands, so I know kind of who I'm talking to, has anybody here, or how many people have tried something virtual reality before? Okay, good. So a lot of you. Okay, good. So I'm not going to go into super detail about the tech specifically, but hopefully I still give you guys a little bit of useful information. So my name's Harrison Olajos, and like Casper mentioned there, CEO of UP360. So I've always been really obsessed with technology. When I was 14, I started my first company. I've had several tech startups since, and about 2 years ago, a friend of mine introduced me to virtual reality. It's totally changed the course of my life, so much so that I sold the companies that I was working on to put 100% of my time and effort into using the technology. My mission was pretty simple. I wanted to educate people about it, I wanted to inspire people to start using it, and I wanted to find uses beyond just gaming and entertainment with technology. So I started bringing it into businesses, into charities, into cities, into schools, doing workshops and educational sessions. And over the course of the last 2 years, I've enabled over 2,100 people, given them the experience to try virtual reality for the first time. We've worked with kids as young as 2 years old. And we've worked with people as old as 92. Yeah?
That was my elementary school.
Where was it? So we've done a lot of really, really cool things. We've seen a lot of interesting things. We've seen people put the headset on and laugh hysterically and fall over. We've seen people start crying in joy, and we've seen people scream. We've worked with a lot of different technologies. On the lower end of things are the more affordable, less immersive technologies like 360 video, taking it a step further, Google Cardboard, Samsung Gear VR, all great technologies. And then early on we started working with the Windows mixed reality series of headsets, not to be confused with mixed reality because it's actually a virtual reality headset. The classic Oculus Rift, who was the first big company in the space to make an impact, and then our personal favorite, the HTC Vive. And what we really quickly realized is it was with the more expensive but more immersive headsets where a lot of this magic happens and where the technology really shines. We were able to kind of classify things into 2 different categories, and a lot of people who have tried virtual reality haven't actually tried true virtual reality. On the one hand, there's immersive video. So that's the Google Cardboard, that's the Samsung Gear VR, and that's the classic 360 video that you can see on YouTube or Facebook. That isn't true virtual reality. True virtual reality is with the hardware like the Vive, like the Oculus, like the mixed reality headset. And the biggest difference between the two is immersive video is filmed with a photo or with a camera, and it's static. It's not immersive. True virtual reality enables the user to have 6 degrees of freedom. So when you put the headset on, you can walk forward, you can walk backward, side to side, look up and down, and more often than not, you have controllers. So you're able to fully interact with the world, and you're not just stationary looking at exactly what somebody else wants you to look at or being still on a spot. That's the immersive photo and video. And VR early on got a bad rap because the immersive photo and video stuff is great, it's good, it has a lot of use, but it was giving VR a bad name because people would film all these different experiences, they'd pitch it as VR, somebody who had never tried VR before would put it on and it would often trigger motion sickness because they'd be on a roller coaster or they'd be in a car or they'd be on a plane. And when you get a lot of movement, especially when you don't have that depth perception, there's a disconnect in the brain and you start feeling sick, especially people who are prone to motion sickness in a car or who have vertigo. Immersive photo and video, if not done correctly, can cause that sickness. With real virtual reality, getting 90 frames per second and not including that false movement, there's no more motion sickness, there's no more vertigo, and 99.999% of the time it's a really, really positive experience for people. So VR, all the companies who put it out there, they didn't really do a good job of conveying it up until HTC Vive. So this is a clip that I like to show to give you guys a good idea of what true VR is.
Can I go first?
All right, go crazy.
Filming here at the Green Screen Studio is just the best way to found. Everyone else can't
Aw, it's so cute. Oh. Hey, what's sticking out? Come here. You want the stick? Yeah, go get it. He actually gets it. Come on. Oh, you're so cute.
It makes you feel like you're pulling a string back. Left, check left. Oh, yeah, nice shot.
Oh my goodness, these eyes are so cool.
So again, a really quick video, but it shows you like when you put the headset on and you're dealing with true virtual reality that has that freedom, you're in that world. And it's such a powerful technology because not only does it allow you to be in any environment at any time, travel back in time, travel into space, but it's creating scalable learning experiences. So when you create something once, it's there and it's then can be replicated to anybody who has access to the hardware. It's learning by doing, it's enhanced visual learning, and it helps develop creativity. But the most important thing with this technology and the kind of the magic that we talk about is the ability for the technology to trigger the same part of the brain that controls your emotion. So generally speaking, two sides of the brain. One side is your logic, is your mathematics, it's that black and white stuff. And the other side of the brain is the more abstract piece, the side that controls emotion and creativity and love and all of that stuff. VR has the power to speak to that side of the brain, which is the exact same piece of the brain that's active when you take a trip somewhere and you experience that for real. VR is enabling that. And what we found is because of this, we're having all these crazy reactions to the technology, things that with a lot of other mediums couldn't be possible. So to demo the concept of how VR talks to your emotion, we have a really, really quick demo. Is there anybody in here that hasn't tried VR that wants to give this a go? Yeah, come on up. So this is called Ritchies Plank Experience. Does anybody know Ritchies Plank?
Yes.
Okay, a couple people. This is good. So this is the one
For Halloween.
for Halloween nights. Yeah, there's a Halloween edition as well, and it's terrifying. But this is what we use a lot of the times just to demonstrate the concept of how VR speaks to the emotional piece of the brain. So Matt's gonna fire it up here for us, if it's going. Yeah, you got it right there. Perfect. And then this is the Vive Pro, so it's top of the line right now. It's got the best resolution, the best tracking, and again, the higher end with the hardware you get, the better the experience, and the less disconnect the brain has, the more you actually start to think that you're actually wherever you are when you put the headset on. It uses 2 tracking sensors, infrared tracking, so it works extremely well in rooms like this, but when you start getting in front of mirrors and direct sunlight, it stops to work as well as it does. So first we're gonna put the headset on.
Any disclaimers or warnings first?
Do you have any heart conditions? No. Are you afraid of heights?
No.
Okay, there you go. So we'll put that on, and you can just kind of get that comfortable over your eyes. You can see okay?
Yeah.
Perfect, and I'll tighten that a little bit for you. And all the VR, the true VR has stereoscopic sound as well, which basically means as you move around the environment, the sound stays like it's coming from the object. So the elevator bell, for example, sounds like it's coming from where the bell is. I think you just pressed it for him. Whoops. That's okay. You'll see 2 controllers in front of you. If you take a step back, you're on the other side of the elevator doors. So bring these into the elevator. Okay, just 1 second. So before you press any buttons, you see the button that says plank on your right hand side? Right on the, right over here. You gotta press that, perfect.
Oh, I see. Cool.
Before you start flying around.
Alright.
And again, it's tracking his head movement, so as he looks around, it's picking up where he is and it's orienting him to the digital world. So the brain thinks he's in an elevator right now.
I can't see from here, but we have the plank on the floor.
Yes.
Yeah, and we have a real piece of wood on the floor. It's actually
I see.
yeah. So
That is creepy.
and you can walk to the end, and you can either jump off, or you can walk back. So he's doing a great job. I would say probably about 75. Don't take too big of a jump, or you can jump right into the chair. You can just take one step off. About 75% of people that we put through this, fear of heights or no fear of heights, they get to the plank and they stop and they start screaming and they start shaking and they start sweating, and the fear kicks in, and that's
Really cool.
Yeah.
Really cool.
So you,
I can feel my heart actually, it did pick up. Like,
yeah.
I've been in high altitude exposures, so I'm kind of used to walking at heights, but you can feel the emotional reaction, the body's reaction.
Exactly, and you look a little sweaty. So yeah, again, it's a really simple demo, but it conveys that point of how VR speaks to that emotional piece of the brain, the piece that controls the fight or flight and the emotional responses. And that kind of gets us into the next slide here, which is where the industry is at, and with the hardware as it gets better, where the industry is going. So when we got into the space about 2 years ago, it was probably closer to about 85 to 90% of the industry was all gaming and entertainment, for obvious reasons. Who doesn't want to be in a really intense first-person shooter game and be experiencing that stuff firsthand that people are already super addicted to? But that being said, the gamers are the people who understand the technology in depth and can troubleshoot it really easy. So when the first series of this hardware started coming out with the Oculus Rift and the Vive Series 1, there was a lot of technical problems and you had to be a gamer to understand how to use the technology properly. But the industry is changing and it's changing rapidly. So that number has gone down to about 70% this year, and the projections are that it's going to keep going down over the years. Some of my personal favorite uses of the technology are in marketing. So using the headset to make the person feel whatever it is you want to feel as an advertiser, so that they're going to be more compelled to buy that product. So that one, a really simple experience similar to this, except you put the pair of running shoes on, then they put the headset on you and you start walking across a bridge and you feel like you're up on the mountains. And for a company who's selling running shoes, they don't just want you to think of the running shoes as a pair of running shoes. They want you to see their product and see their brand and feel something. And that is kind of where marketing is headed and has been headed for the last few years here. But now with VR, Coca-Cola doesn't have to sell the impact of magic through all their different branding campaigns. Now what they can do is, again, use something like this to put you in that magical environment, that magical world. So when you think of the brand, you'll remember that experience since it's talking to that emotional piece. Other favorite use of the technology would be for training. For obvious purposes, this one is great. So equipment training, testing out things that are dangerous or that you can't get a hold of, whether it be forklift training, which there's some colleagues of mine in Ontario that are developing forklift training simulators, where using virtual reality and a combination of the steering wheels and the controllers and the joysticks, you can actually see and feel what it's like to be in a forklift, and if you turn too sharply, the forklift will fall over, and it's pulling the risk of putting somebody on a forklift for the first time, or just running them through videos and running them through photos, and then throwing them on a forklift. And then some of my other favorite uses are a few projects that we're involved with. So within the last 6 months, we partnered up with the Catholic District School Board in Eastern Ontario, and we're planning a pilot project that's going to be starting next semester with about 10 other schools. And this is like the stuff I dreamed of when I was a kid. It was like Magic School Bus, except in real life. So with VR, And what's happening with that quick clip is you're shrinking down into the size of a little nanobot that is going into the blood vessels and it's experiencing what it's like to be in the human body, and bringing that into the high schools. The projections that we're making is we're probably going to see at least a 3-point grade average increase over the 10 schools and 1,500 students that we're working with. I'll grab questions at the end there. The other really cool use that we're looking into is job preparation, except job preparation for people with barriers. So pre-Bill 148, a lot of these employment centers that help people with barriers, they were able to do unpaid internships and job sampling, and they'd go into the workplace with their clients. Sometimes it would be an hour a week, sometimes it would be an hour a month, and they would be unpaid placements, but that person could get that little bit of experience that they needed to get them to a point where they were operating at 50 or 60%. When Bill 148 came out, they lost that ability. So what we've done is we've reconstructed all of these different workplace environments in hospitality, in retail, and in manufacturing, and we've given these tools to the same employment centers so that they can now bring the workplace to them, and they can put their clients in. They can now put their clients into those environments and experience that real time and work with their clients one-on-one without disrupting the workplace and working at their own pace. So for people who might be hearing impaired, they can pull up little sign language narrators to help them through the instructions. And the most important thing is they can work at their own pace, because they work with such a diverse clientele on the spectrum that some people will need 500 hours of training in this thing before they can get their first paid employment, where some people only need 10 or 20 hours before they can get that paid employment. But the thing is, with this technology, it's fast tracking people with barriers to a point where they're ready for paid work, and that's huge for organizations like Career Services, who's the one that we've been working closely with this. And the third and final use, again, one of my personal favorites because of the potential for it to do so much good. I'm sure everybody here who went through high school probably remembers those cheesy career courses where you do a quiz and then all of a sudden it spits out 5 or 10 careers in front of you and you have to select from a list, and that cheesy test and that short list is your entire future. Well, what we've been doing is we've been working extremely close with Employment Ontario. We've partnered up with them, and we've been developing a career simulator. So using the technology so that youth and so that people who may be transitioning into other careers can put the headset on and sample a wide variety of careers, from heavy equipment operator to chiropractor, and again, doing it at their own pace in whatever environment they want to do that in, and then being able to make better educated, more concrete decisions about what they want to do for the rest of their life. And the biggest things with this technology and the way we're going to get this moving forward is by getting leaders in the community, leaders in business, leaders in government, people who are willing to take those first steps and who have visions for where this technology can go, and pairing them up with the creators, because the possible uses for this technology is infinite. But again, unless you can find those leaders and unless you can find those creators, the technology is going to be static. But again, a lot of people and a lot of businesses have been stepping up as the hardware gets easier to use, and there's a lot of really, really cool projects out there. So I encourage everyone, if you haven't tried the technology, True VR, it's going to be around here later in the networking session. So come out and try it, because photos and videos do not give this technology a justice. And when you try it for the first time, it's literally going to change your way of thinking. Thank you. Questions? Yes.
For that simulation you were doing with the Catholic School Board,
Yes.
what headset were you using?
So we're looking at using either the HTC Vive or the Windows Mixed Reality headset. And again, the main reason being, although the technology is a little bit more expensive, what we're doing there is we're getting 15 headsets, so enough for a class of 30 to pair up in groups of 2, and we're developing a bunch of curriculum, so using pre-built stuff like the thing you just saw there, developing almost a series of like finding hide and seek kind of stuff where they go through the experience. The partner that they're working with has to go through that worksheet, and over the course of a couple weeks and a few sessions, looking at, again, using VR to get that knowledge out of. And the main reason with those 2 headsets is it's the most immersive, and as you get more immersive, although the cost is a lot higher, that's where you see the real cool effect of stuff happening.
I guess the other question to that is Oculus Quest. Where do you see that at?
Oculus Quest, is that the most recent one?
That's the one with the 6 mobile
Yeah,
headset that they built, yeah.
Yeah. So the Quest and where this technology itself is probably heading is soon enough it's going to be snipped. I think the biggest barrier with the Quest, it's cool, you can do a lot of stuff with it, but it's still limited in terms of like the graphics and what you can do. You can't quite hit that 90 frame rate. So people prone to motion sickness, it's a lot more prevalent when you're using the lower end stuff. The graphics card, like even running a 1080 graphics card, we still have to spend days and weeks optimizing a lot of the stuff we built because it's that magic point of like 90 frames per second where your brain no longer is perceiving that you're in a digital world. Yeah?
You're mentioning marketing companies giving experience, providing experience.
Yep.
How will that actually be administered if you're sitting at home? Like, what's that next, that third generation of VR where you don't have to come in?
So
be at home
there's two ways that I see it. So currently as it sits, it's experiential marketing. So setting up in malls, setting up at big events, and having those brand activations. So people who don't have the hardware can use the hardware. But the other piece of it, as the hardware gets more accessible and more consumers start adopting it, you'll see these games, and most likely they'll be like freemium games or freemium experiences that a company could release. So Coca-Cola, for example, could release a fun kind of game around the concept of happiness and magic, or you'll see VR advertising intertwined with VR content. So like you're watching a YouTube video, you might be in the middle of a VR video, and then all of a sudden you'll see VR advertisement. But that probably won't happen until more consumers pick up the hardware.
But you need the...
Yeah, you'll always need the hardware for it. I think like 5 years from now, VR, AR, and mixed reality, it'll all just be one simple pair of glasses, but we're still quite a ways away from that. Yeah?
How do you simulate the job being a chiropractor?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So we haven't started the build on that one yet, but one of the things that we try to convey is one, the core components that career entails. So for example, what environment is the person in? Do they deal with people frequently? Don't they deal with people? And then, although we can't get the simulation of the pressure, dealing with the clients and those types of interactions we can recreate. And then also teaching them, okay, so one of the core things of chiropractic is cracking backs and doing adjustments. So we can recreate that, but we can't necessarily give them like the actual feel for cracking a back, but we can give them a taste of the environment.
But they haven't trained, right? They haven't gone through.
No, exactly. And we're not trying to train people to be a chiropractor, although you could do that. That would be an extremely complex, probably year-long process to give them more formal training. We're just trying to give them career sampling experiences. The training stuff that we're looking at and that we're developing are more generic careers. So, for example, hospitality. So how to do food prep properly, or how to properly set a dining room table. That's the stuff that we're looking at because they're more straightforward experiences to replicate, and they're much less risky. Whereas chiropractics, we're not saying this technology is going to get rid of trainers. It's just going to supplement what trainers are doing. Yep.
Do you see the revival of platforms like Second Life in a VR model?
I don't know what Second Life is, but I saw Matt. Yeah, Matt. I'll let Matt field that one really quick. He's our CTO, and he oversees the development team.
Not Second Life per se.
Models like that.
Something similar, maybe. I know they've been doing a lot of large-scale role-playing games in VR, especially over in Korea and Japan. There is something kind of similar to Second Life. It's called Engage VR, and it actually lets you be sort of in a classroom or board meeting with other people. And I think that's where something will go. Whether or not we get a full scale, like you're living your Second Life, basically, in another world, like a whole Sims in VR type of thing. I mean, that'd be really cool, but that's a huge undertaking. Just the amount of time and resources that needs to go into basically rebuilding Second Life by putting it all in VR. There's
for anybody that doesn't know what Second Life is, open world game.
Second Life is. Do you guys know what World of Warcraft is? Vaguely. Okay, it's a lot like that, except it's more normal life.
Like Minecraft, not exploring.
Yeah, a little bit, but you're not building things.
More complex.
You're just like living your life. And a lot of business, originally it started as somebody's using it as, to live their own life as like a separate game. But eventually it turned into people can have virtual board meetings, people can, talk to their friends through there.
Through Second Life, right. Okay, so I can simplify this a little bit for anybody who isn't on the technical or gaming side. So Second Life is almost like Sims, and with virtual reality development and like true VR development, so developing the environments, developing the art, you have to think of it every time you add an element, and an element being an asset. So for example, if we want to recreate this room, we would have to build each and every chair, we'd have to build the lights, we'd have to build the characters. The more elements you add, the more complex it is and the more computing power you need. So right now you're bound by how much can you put in an environment before the computer can't handle it anymore, because it doesn't see things in the same way a computer sees things. Because you have those 6 degrees of freedom, it sees things like fully 3D rendered. So you can't build extremely complex environments without getting super optimized. In the back there?
If I can add to that, Project Samsara is actually taking the next generation Second Life. And then there's also High Fidelity, which is one of their basically spin-offs from someone within that company.
Yeah.
They're all going after that next level of Second Life.
Yeah.
inside.
It's like what's the movie that just came out?
Ready Player One.
Ready Player One. Yeah, and that, I mean, that 10, 20 years from now, maybe we'll get to a point like that. But again, you're bound by the hardware right now.
Yeah, you know.
Yep.
So are there some newer libraries being developed where you already have a VR chair built, or already have like a room that you can kind of template that you can?
Yeah, I think so. And the other thing too is you can take a lot of other stuff and you can optimize them for VR. So Unreal Engine is probably this game engine that supports this stuff the most right now. And there is a lot of specific VR ready assets, but the main thing that says if something's VR capable or not is the poly count. So you need something that has a low poly count, and to make something with low poly look realistic, it's a bit of a playing around game. So it's a lot of...
It's a balancing act.
Yeah, exactly, balancing act, yeah. Yep.
To create content, are you using third-party software, or are you just doing it from the ground up?
So we're developing everything in Unreal Engine.
Okay.
Yeah, Unreal Engine. There's a few other engines out there that are supposed VR ready, but Unreal being like the absolute biggest in esports and gaming right now, they have the most funding, so they have the best tools. So we stick to their platform. And one more question, then I think that's probably all we have time for. Yep.
The video you shared earlier about the education application is super cool. You can get into the human body. Would you share a little bit more about the creating process of the application itself?
Yeah, so I think the way, again, the simplified version, if anybody's more interested in the technical, Matt can expand on that later on when we're networking. But the process that we use for creating is typically we'll look to find that partner first, and we'll partner up with somebody who either already delivers the training or is an expert in the field. So the video you saw of the excavator, for example, we developed that in conjunction with the Heavy Equipment Operations School in Morrisburg, and over the course of 2 weeks interviewing guys who have been in the industry for years. We take photo references, we take video references, we bring the art team out to the site, we bring the developers out to the site, and we take the time to do the research and figure out what that career, or whatever it is we're developing, what that encapsulates. Then we go into a storyboarding process to make sure that all the research, we're hitting all of the key points. And then once we do the storyboarding, it gets handed off to the development team, and the development team looks at developing the mechanics, and then the art team looks at redeveloping all of the assets and doing all the artwork and the environment creation. And the development and art team kind of go hand in hand in terms of optimization and getting that to a point where it's running at 90 frames per second, it looks good, and it's ready to be shipped. And the development process is probably the longest piece of all of this. We can turn a career around, something simple with not a lot of complexities. We can turn that around in about 2 months. And usually to actually develop something, bare minimum you can get away with is probably about $50,000 for something good, something that you're going to get a lot of value out of. And we've seen projects that have gone all the way up to $5 million, developing super complex things that you actually get certifications out of coming when you finish the programs. So perfect. Yeah, if anybody has any more questions or again wants to try this afterwards, we'll be around. So perfect.